What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Chuck's Kitchen, your absolute favorite cooking YouTube series, amateur cooking show, Food Network Future Star, whatever you want to call me. This episode's going to be pretty special. So it is my first Chuck's Kitchen field to table episode. Not farm to table, field to table. And when I say that, I mean my best friend Casey Matthews, shout out Casey. He shot a beautiful whitetail buck earlier in the season, and I was fortunate enough to get about 1.5 pounds, 2 pounds of venison from him. So shout out Casey, thank you again. This episode's gonna be great. So it is wild venison, wild deer obviously, taken from the field to your table. This is gonna be a cool tutorial. We're doing a venison stew. All you hunters out there that don't know what to do with venison other than the backstrap, do a stew. And I'll show you how. For people that are friends of hunters or spouses of hunters that don't know how to process or cook wild game, this stew is going to be a super easy, simple recipe that the entire family's going to love. And I'm excited just to get to it. And cooking venison on the channel for the first time won't be the last time, because I know Casey's going to shoot another good buck this season. So let's get to it. Once again, welcome back. It's Chuck's Kitchen. Woo! All right, now it's time to prep most of the ingredients. So as you guys will see here, I got all the veggies prepped from left to right. I have a couple sweet potatoes that I'm going to cube up. I actually just minced a small shallot, one large white onion. I also have your typical stew veggies such as celery there, and then I chopped up some carrots as well, just a fine chop. I'd say 1/4-inch cubes. Now onto the meat. Show you, this is just venison here. I believe it's the shoulder that Casey got for me. I went ahead and cut it into like 1-inch cubes, basically stew chunks. But I wanted to show you guys something. So on venison, there's barely any fat, right? You see, that's all meat, no fat at all. But there is a little bit of fat here. And for this stew, you're gonna wanna try to trim some of that as you're cubing it, because that won't really render down. It'll be more like the silver skin, like on ribs. It'll just be chewy. So you want to get rid of as much as that as possible to leave you a nice chunk of lean meat. So no rhyme or reason here. Just cut it into manageable cubes for your stew. It'll be so tender when it's done, it won't really matter anyway. Make sure you got a sharp knife. All right, great. Meat is ready. I like to spread it out, and then I'm gonna give it a nice dusting of seasoning before I sear it off in your hot pan or your hot Dutch oven. If you don't have a Dutch oven, you could always use a crock pot for something like this, but I do like to sear the meat before I put it in the crock pot. So, Florida man, you got your Everglades seasoning here. This stuff is so good on pretty much everything. So be pretty liberal with it. Here we go. Open it up. There we go. So Everglades seasoning is basically salt, pepper, oregano, garlic, a little bit of onion powder, all the good stuff, right? Now that your meat is nice and seasoned, we're going to go ahead and sear it in the Dutch oven. I got our Le Creuset Dutch oven to a medium-high heat with about 2 tablespoons of olive oil, ready for the meat to be seared. You want to sear your meat first. A little bit of extra seasoning. You don't want to cook the meat all the way through. You just want to get a nice sear. You're going to sear that for about 2.5 minutes. All right, now all the meat's been nicely browned and seared. Not cooked all the way through though, just nice and seared. So pan or the Dutch oven's still going to be pretty hot. Now is time to saute up your veggies. You're going to want to start with the onions and the celery and the carrots. And I threw in the shallots as well in there too. Start softening those up, letting them cook down nicely. I'll say onions, carrots, and celery, that's the base of every good stock or every good, stew, or they call that a roux in French cuisine. So you want to brown the onions a little bit, just soften up the veggies just a little bit. To deglaze the bottom of the Dutch oven, I'm going to pour just a little bit of beef broth. You're going to use the rest of this beef broth for the stew. So deglazing the bottom, all those good bits from the meat start to come off the bottom of the pan. You pour in a little bit of beef broth, stir it up. And I'm going to cover my Dutch oven so the steam starts to really sweat down the onions and soften the carrots and veggies. So you can see here we got our veggies getting nice and brown. Those onions are getting nice and translucent. When the onions look like they're almost done, I like to throw in a couple cloves of garlic. Don't want to put the garlic in too early because then you'll burn the garlic. Literally just whole cloves. Let that cook down for another couple minutes, 2-3 minutes. Get some nice browning on the garlic, and then we're going to toss back in our meat and add our stock. Now these veggies have been sweating down a good bit. Looks delicious. Now we're going to add the meat and then add our broth and some other cool ingredients. So we got that venison that we browned a little bit earlier. Add it back to the pot. Give it a good little stir. Let everything marinate and get to know each other again. And then we're going to add the rest of our beef broth. Actually, before we do that, can of diced tomatoes, drain it. Make sure you drain it. We don't need all that extra liquid. And then we're going to add the rest of this. It should be 4 cups of beef broth. Just so it covers pretty much all of the meat. You don't need to go too crazy with the beef broth. If you don't use all of it, that's fine. Save a little bit. And then I have some cubed sweet potatoes. You see, leave the skin on. I like the texture of that better. Just put that right on top. Super simple. Spread it out. And then we're going to bring this to a boil. Add a little bit more Everglades seasoning for good measure. Don't go too crazy with it because the beef broth is very salty. So bring this to a boil. Once it reaches a boil, you're going to drop it down to a simmer, cover it, and don't touch it for 2 hours. Be back in a little. All right, welcome back. Venison, field to table edition. You can see the stew got brought up to a boil. So what we're going to do, oh, by the way, I forgot to show you guys. I added a couple dashes of Worcestershire sauce to the stew. Forgot to tell you, but definitely do that. It's brought up to a boil. Drop the temperature on that to a low simmer. And then we are going to cover this up. Be careful, it's freaking hot. This Dutch oven gets so freaking hot. Anyway, cover it up. It'll drop down to a simmer. And don't touch it for 2 hours. So as we wait for the venison to be done in the Dutch oven, on the stove, in the crock pot, whatever you guys are using, I'm going to give you a beer review. Everyone knows Chuck's Kitchen, we review good beers and good beers only and cold beers on this episode. So today's episode is Due South Category 3 on draft. As you can see here, I'm not super strong. This is just an empty keg that I finished last week. So shout out to Saltwater Brewery. Thanks for giving me good beer. But that's not what's going to be on the keg today. So I have category 3 due south. Check out my new tap handle, courtesy of Saltwater Brewery. Also got this vintage Miller High Life tap handle, courtesy of Cowboy Circus. Shout out Danny Margle, Danny Graham from San Antonio. All right, we're gonna give you a good little pour. Now it's not 5 o'clock, but check the clock. Always 5 o'clock in Chuck's Kitchen. This is a mediocre pour. As you can see, nice amber color. Smells good, smells like beer. Smells like I cleaned my lines before I filled up the keg. So let's give it a taste and I'll give you a rating. Pretty good. Not super hoppy, not super bitter. I'm gonna give it a 9.732 out of 10. 9.732 out of 10. There you go, cheers. Drink up. All right, guys, it's been about 2 hours, a little more than 2 hours, maybe 2 hours and 15 minutes in the Dutch oven. Let's check this out. It's been simmering. I turned off the heat a while ago because it was pretty hot, but you can see that is fully cooked. It looks delicious. I'm gonna give you guys a taste test in a little bit, but as a side dish, I steamed together some basmati rice. That'll go really well with the stew, just to show you how tender everything is. I mean, let's just pull apart. This venison's gonna be so delicious. Stay tuned for a taste test. All right, final taste test. Try a little bit of the venison. Be careful, it's really hot, but that is fantastic. You guys, can't even talk, it's so good. You guys need to find yourself a friend that shoots deer that could give you venison, or go out and get a deer yourself, because that is fantastic. You all should try that recipe. This has been Chuck's Kitchen. Serve it up with some basmati rice as well. You guys know what it is. Time to eat, time to have a good beer, and I'll check you guys on the next episode. Thanks for watching.